Sweet. Welcome to a Friday Reads, where I talk about what I read, what I'm reading, what I hope to get to next. Also, open invitation. Anyone and everyone can do a Friday Reads. I think it's really cute. Sometimes I'll get friends of mine who are like, I kind of want to do a weekly update, but I don't want you to think I'm stealing your idea. I do not own this idea. I, in fact, took inspiration from back when BookTube used to have Friday Reads. So, open invitation. I love knowing what people are reading each week. I am nosy. So if you post that content, I will watch that content. I will be super happy. It just was coming up when I was chatting with some friends this week. And so, the books. I have finished 3 books, I think. 3 books since we last chatted. Go me, go me. I was almost done with one of them the last time I checked in. I'm a good chunk of the way through another book, and I'm on the precipice of needing to figure out what I'm going to do next. And on Valentine's Day, we went to a couple bookstores in Cleveland that I need to shout out because, like, oh my god, so good, so good. Although I'm realizing I didn't look up the name of one of them before I started, but that's okay. Editing Angela will put it on the screen eventually. Sorry, future me. Okay, the first thing that I finished since last time was Captain Verpatrol's Alliance, and it just ended really strong. Like, I think there's a little lull for me at like the 55 to 65% mark because it kind of separates the two characters that I wanted together, and I didn't want that. I wanted them to be together, and then they were together at the end, and then the end was just like so funny. Just such a confluence of events, and Ivan was having such good one-liners, and it had a good epilogue. It's wild, though. I think I have a novella and 2 books left. I don't even know what happens in Cryoburn. I think Cryoburn might be the last Miles book, and then I think the one after that might be with Cordelia. I don't know, which would be awesome, but also, like, I don't know what's happening. I haven't looked at any synopses. I, never do before I start a book. But Verkosigan is going splendidly, having a great time. Eventually, soon, within a couple months, we will probably have a Should You Read. But again, if you're here and you're like, but where do I start? You're having so much fun. I'm just always going to say Shards of Honor. There are other starting points, but I even just listened to Bejoled's talk about which one she actually wrote first, and although 3 were published at the same time, the first one was Shards of Honor. So truly, you should just read Shards of Honor. Although you probably will still have a good time if you start with Warrior's Apprentice. I just think Cordelia is easier to love than Miles, personally. Okay, then the next thing I finished is Love Medicine by Louise Erdrich. What an interconnected vignette time, which is, my bread and butter. It at least didn't get as heavy after I left off. We had some more hopeful characters, and we had some just later life stages we got to look at for some of our main characters, and some connections that were formed, some perspectives on past events from new characters that we didn't get their perspectives before. I enjoyed it immensely. It's not going to be my favorite, but for a debut of one of my favorite authors, it's solid, and it's convinced one of my friends to, read more of her works, and I'm always down for that. Because I was buddy reading this with Mara from Books Like Woe, and she's, super excited to move on and read, I think, potentially The Sentence next, and then her and I are going to read The Roundhouse at some point, because this is apparently the one series where I don't read them in any particular order, apparently. I just pick them up, and I enjoy whatever family saga is in front of me, because I think she just does family sagas incredibly compellingly. They're very human, though. These are the messiest humans that I have read by her so far. These people are a lot. And let's see, the other one I finished, which I was not anticipating finishing so soon, but I was kind of pushed to do it because my library loan was due. But also, it was a great way to spend last night finishing this book, and that is Chain Gang All-Stars. And I fall into, I really love this camp. I know it's kind of contentious. I know a lot of people have a lot of mixed opinions. I will say I listened to the audiobook, and the audiobook is a god-tier audiobook. Some audiobooks make it more fun to read a book, maybe, or they're good and helpful for momentum. This audiobook, I think, makes it a different reading experience. Because I did try to read a few pages in isolation, and I didn't dislike it. But the voice acting, I think, really brings the characters to life. Especially since this is kind of both dialogue heavy, and it uses a lot of short, stilted sentences that I think came across better when someone narrates it to you, especially just depending on how you read. If you don't sub-vocalize, I think the stilted sentences might be a little jarring, because they might not make as cohesive of a picture. So I think when I first talked about this, I thought maybe it'd be like Squid Game, but I'm taking it back. It's like Gladiator. It's definitely Gladiator. And this year I actually did watch Gladiator and Gladiators 2. And it's very on-the-nose theming about, why we should be abolitionists, why the penal system is wrong. And it's very on the nose. It has these fantastic footnotes, which I think that's the one thing I didn't love in the audiobook, is sometimes the footnotes would just like, it took me a while without having the physical book to realize, oh, I'm in a footnote. Okay, now I'm back in the text. Things that it did that I thought was really nice is every time someone dies, you get a footnote about their past. Every time we learn about a new atrocity in this futuristic society, we get to learn a fact about our history with the penal system. And, it's kind of like comparing apples to apples. You're just like, I'm so grossed out by this thing in this book. But wait, that's been the law here since 1970, whatever. Like, and I was actually talking to a friend about how some dystopians feel more like we can get there than others. A lot of people really love Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents because it's like, oh, it's 2024. We're in 2025. This is eerily similar. And that one's a dystopian where, like, she sat down, she looked at the history of things, she looked at the systems we weren't changing. She thought, well, what will happen if these systems continue to stay stagnant for the next 20-some years? A la Parable of the Sower. Like, she used a lot of sociology. And then you have things like the Hunger Games, which are still very fun and good, but, like, I actually do not know the political thought experiment, the science thought experiment that gets us from here to there. And this is somewhere in the middle. We're on the doorstep of Parable of the Sower. And this we don't quite have the tech for, but we do have the morals for. We could totally be these people. Like, that's not even a question to me. We already think that if someone is in prison, they deserve to be there. Like, we already think that, like, as a society, not you as an individual, not me, but people just assume if you're in jail, if you are being punished, you did something worth punishing. And sometimes that's true, and sometimes that's not. And that's the first problem, is sometimes it's not true. The second problem is that this system doesn't really prevent the problems from happening again. So it's a Band-Aid. And it's a Band-Aid that makes a lot of money. It's a Band-Aid that harms a lot of people and families. And in this case, you take the premise of people have already accepted that people who are murderers, who, abuse other individuals, they're scum of the earth anyways. They're already on death row. They're already in prison for life. So if they choose to go into Chain Gang All-Stars, that's okay. Then we can, without any guilt, watch people murder each other on TV. And we are so on that doorstep. And so I think I enjoyed seeing something that isn't our awful now. I enjoyed the thematic context. I really thought these characters came to light. The ending, I think, was darn near perfect for me. Like, oh my goodness. And also it has this kind of like Love Medicine, which wherever I put that, where I said this had interconnected vignettes, that kind of happened here. There was a moment when I was realizing as I'm learning about some different characters, which it's very obvious who your main characters are from the beginning, seeing them intersect and cross paths was really cool. Like, really cool. It really made one of the last battles, like, hit. And I just think the intentionality around this was really good. And I do think that, I totally get if the character work doesn't work for some people. For me, I love Hurricane. I love I love Loretta. I love the characters in this book, even if they have done despicable acts in the past. Maybe some of the side characters are definitely more one note, but I think the general point wasn't to have this deep background into characters. I think this was meant to be a page turner that got you quickly in and out of this awful place. Like, the tools that they use that are considered non-violent tools for keeping people, like, under control are just... Again, we don't have the tech yet, but if we had the tech, we would use it. Like, we would. Like, it's just... And so I think even if you don't get on with the characterization, I do think I see its intentionality. And for me, it just happily worked. I was very into it. So if you're an audiobook person, I would treat yourself to the audiobook. But I'm sure physically reading it is also fine. But I do think this is one of those cases where, because of the choice of writing style, and even like at the beginning, it almost looks like parts and it reminded me of like a play. And so it makes sense for me for it to be like an auditory experience. Anyways, I really enjoyed this. I'm so glad. I thought I would. I really did. And every negative review made me think, I bet I'm going to like this even more than I anticipate. Now, the other thing that I'm in the middle of is The Wolf. Which, right, I didn't think I'd be picking this up, but I did. I'm about this far through. This has been very pleasant for me to read. Everyone in my buddy read hates it, except for Ben. Not Ben Coleman, who has a booktube channel. Other Ben, who's my bookish twin. I have a bookish twin in Scotland. You should be jealous, because I do. So I'm reading this. I'm having a great time. Everyone is completely bouncing off of it. Which is funny because then, I was reading this at the same time, and a lot of people bounce off of this. And I think both of it is because these have really accessible prose. And I don't know what that says about me and my brain right now, but accessible prose are winning. This reminds me a lot of reading Dune. This reminds me a lot of reading the Dandelion Dynasty. I think it's somewhere in the middle of the two in terms of cultural complexity, because I don't think Dune's that good. Like, I know, blasphemy, but I don't think Dune's that good at its cultural world building. I think it's fine. I like Dune. I like bumbling around it. I really liked its easy to read modern writing style. And I'm remembering that writing style and that level of politics as I'm reading The Wolf. And then Dandelion Dynasty, which is all focused on culture, like that's just the magnum opus. This is not touching that for me right now, but it's reminding me of that experience. And this is about an alternative history in the United Kingdom area. And up north, we got giants. If you ever never heard, there was like this idea in anthropology that has been debunked that maybe at one point when the mammoths were around, we had really big people. Like, huge 8-foot tall people. There is no skeletal evidence of such a thing. But in this fantasy book, let's say we do. Let's say we do have really large people. And in the South, it's more our Homo sapien ancestors who are in the London area. And they are clashing in a battle. There's a change of power, and we kind of have one main character from each side, but we also get different perspectives. And I don't know, I'm just enjoying bumbling around, and it's easy to read. Like, I can sit down and read like 30 pages of this without even blinking, which is not normal for me. So like I was saying last time that it was rubbing my brain right, it's rubbing my brain right. Some people's brains, it does not rub right, so you should just go into that with some caution. Because I don't know how to review or recommend writing styles to people. I can tell you that I sub-vocalize. I can tell you that I don't visualize when I read. And that if a sentence gets really long, I lose the plot really quickly. Like paragraph-long sentences that like Charles Dickens likes, ooh, it's bad for my brain. Ooh, it's bad. This one, I'm not even thinking about it, and it wasn't until I was doing buddy reads that, like, someone was bringing up words that really, like, threw them out of it, and I'm like, oh no, that word was perfect for me. I completely and, like, that's the beauty of art and communication, right? Different styles work for different people. But I'm happy. This has been fun. I don't think I like the audio for this. I think my brain is better at handling this than interpreting the audio of it. But I do have the audio if I wanted to in the car, but I just, like, listened to, like, Dua Lipa on the drive home, so I wasn't very compelled to pick the audio version of this up. So that leaves me where? Well, I think if I finish The Wolf, my next physical read will be Unraveling. I'm waiting to see if I get a hold of Rebel Witch, but also, part of the reasons I'm really out of it is Ryan's sick, so I've been sleeping in the guest room, or I'm trying, and then Kieran, even though he never sleeps with us at night, like we don't let him in our bedroom at night. So, like, he's not used to seeing me at night, but he knew I was in the guest room, and that was not allowed. So then I had to sleep on the couch with him. And I've just not been sleeping well, so I'm just, like, very out of it. And hopefully I don't get sick, but I might. So if I get sick, I'm going to treat myself to a copy of Rebel Witch and have a good time. But I think that's kind of what's on the lineup for the end. Maybe I'd get to the Verkoskin novella if I'm truly, like, I don't know what to listen to, and I need an audiobook. But, we're getting near the end of the month. I've actually accomplished most of my TBR. Like, the last two things are Unraveling and Rebel Witch. And then I have a bunch of beautiful books around me, including the 3 I just bought. So one is a book I've read before, and we were in, it's Voices to Voices, I think. It's actually, so it's right now in Tremont, in the Cleveland area, but it's going to be moving to Ohio City this summer, fall. So that's exciting. Ohio City is where we have our West Side Market, and it has Great Lakes Brewery and Market Garden. It has a lot of great areas. It's like a really up-and-coming area in Cleveland. I have a lot of fun there. And, it even has Mitchell's Ice Cream. If you're in the Cleveland area, Mitchell's Ice Cream is very good. And I bought myself a copy of Exit West, which if you are an OG viewer of this channel, I did not read this before I joined BookTube. I think I read this in 2018, but this is one of my favorite literary sci-fi books. Like, and I say sci-fi loosely, it uses a sci-fi premise of the idea that what if suddenly doors go to different countries and it just keeps happening, it doesn't stop and you can't control it. So now what does a world literally without controllable borders look like? The idea of the physical border is gone, which was another concept I loved in Terra Ignota. Like, and it's probably because I have family I can't see because of physical borders. Like, I am directly affected by geological borders all the time. And so the thought experiments of what does the global political state look like? And this is definitely a transition period. Our main characters are from a Middle Eastern country, but they're like perfect, like purposefully we're not told which country, because the whole idea is that it doesn't matter which country we're in. What matters is that this is a country where people need to seek asylum. Period. End of story. When this came out, I think we were having more Syria issues, but purposefully we're not told the country our two main characters are from. And I love it. I love this book a lot. So now I have a copy. And then we have this cool store called Clevo, and this is near Public Square and East 4th Street. So like if you ever were to see like an Indians game, not Indians game, we're the Guardians now, but a baseball game, basketball game, hockey game, it's right in that area. And it's called Clevo, and it only sells translated books. Like, woo. I got so sucked into a shelf. I just sat on the floor for like 20 minutes browsing the Spanish section. And next time maybe I'll go to the German section. Like there's just, because I don't know any of these books. Like I know none of them. And of course, like usually in the Spanish section, you get more like lit fic, like maybe satirical lit fic. But I don't mind that. And I picked two books. One's by a Mexican author and one's by a Venezuelan author. And I was pretty happy about it. This one's called Invasion of the Spirit People. This is by the Mexican author. I just read the first couple lines and I'm like, this kind of reminds me of like Hitchhiker's Guide, Kurt Vonnegut, that sort of style of like satirical work, lit fic work. And yeah, let's see, what's it called? It adopts a gentle fable-like tone approaching the problem of racism from the perspective that any position as idiotic as xenophobia can only be fought with sheer absurdity, which also, right now, in the current times, seems like a delightful experience. And then this book is so cool. It's apparently from a publisher in Chicago area. So the translation side is called The Relentless City Chronicles from Caracas, which is the capital of Venezuela. And the other side is the Spanish version called Caracas Muerde, which means, you know, like, I think it means like dead Caracas. I don't know. I don't actually know what muerde means right now. I'm thinking of moder, which is like to murder. But I could be wrong about the conjugation here. Spanish is not my first language. But it'd be so cool to read the Spanish one and the English one. Oh, and then here's their Clevo thing. But it's just like so cool that there's a whole bookstore dedicated to translated works. Like, I am really excited. Like, I don't read lit ficky stuff all the time, but now I can just read it from translated authors. Like, that's so cool. Anyways, if you're ever in the Cleveland area, we have a large number of pretty unique indie bookstores. None of them have like been like my perfect bookstore because of my weird obsession with sci-fi fantasy that doesn't seem to apparently make money, except if it's romantasy, which we are getting a weird romantasy bookstore soon, apparently. But I just enjoy that like a lot of these bookstores just really do have their own vibe, and they're doing okay. So, but that's also why I bought these books, because whenever I go into an indie bookstore, I'm like, well, I should give you some money, so hopefully you can stay open. It's just that balance of not getting too many books, but also you want to support bookstores so that they exist. Because my Barnes & Nobles isn't that exciting. So, it just is what it is. It's an okay store. It's just not that exciting. That's this Friday Reads. Let me know what you're reading, doing, or watching. I don't know what we'll be doing. It depends on if I catch what Ryan has. It depends on if Ryan's healthy. I did originally have plans this weekend, and they no longer happen. But that's okay. Maybe it'll just be a relaxing weekend, which I might need because I have good news from work, but also more responsibility. So that's on my horizon. Anyways, if you just want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here. I have so many books around me. Let's leave a wolf. Yeah, maybe. Or if there's a scythe. This cover is so good. I really like this book. I mean, gosh, Loretta and Hamara, I love you guys. Oh, it's such a tragedy. Such a tragedy. Anyways, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.